Kenshi was a one-man passion project that turned into a studio-spawning smash hit. It's a hardcore sword-punk RPG with base building and RTS elements. Its influences are many and varied. Fallout, Morrowind, maybe a little bit of Oregon Trail, the list goes on, but that short descriptor does the game less justice than it's owed. Kenshi's world is just rich with deep lore. But all those juicy lore tidbits aren't just hand-delivered to you, the game is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. It tickles the same centers of my brain that digging for Elden Ring lore does, and that's a good thing. The backstory of the setting has been cut into pieces, shuffled around, and scattered across the world space in chunks. Oh, and some of the most important bits the devs have kept to themselves. Classic FromSoft maneuver there. That means that in order to recover the plot of the game, we need to embark on a continent-spanning sightseeing expedition. Lead a group of intrepid adventurers across a land rife with danger and opportunity. Encounter deadly fauna, people with strange customs, and ancient threats waiting to be unearthed. We're gonna get anthropological and more than a little bit archaeological.
I wanted to meet interesting and stimulating people of an ancient culture and kill them.
Yeah, kind of like that. But I am just a humble narrator, and I don't live within the world of Kenshi. We need somebody with boots on the ground to experience this wonderful little slice of hell. This is Lip, a slightly aging, somewhat nebbish aspiring merchant and part-time sneak thief. He's quick on his feet, has sticky fingers, and will be the future face of our group. He's a Greenlander, which are Kenshi's beginner race, with some advantages and no real drawbacks. In that way, Lip is a very human male fighter type of character, but that's fine. Now, Kenshi's approach to introducing you to the game is to hand you a pamphlet of tutorials, spin you around a couple times, smack you on the head, and give you amnesia. If you know nothing about this game and are a little confused on where we are and what's going on, that's fairly normal. Just accept the information that I throw at you, and I promise the world will eventually start to take shape. Prepare to hear some variation of the phrase, "I'll explain that later," many times. This is the Border Zone, an arid region cut into pieces by winding canyons. It geographically lies between the lands of two warring factions and as such has been thrown into disarray for many years. It's sort of a neutral zone with no main governing body. That means there's no lawmen breathing down your neck, but there's not a lot of local infrastructure, and it's kind of rife with bandits. The hub is a prime example of this. It clearly was once an important trade town set at the crossroads of everywhere, but now it's a ruin. A once busy market square is now empty, seeing traffic only from expatriates and vagabonds, people with nowhere better to go. Campfires smolder within the ruins of neglected houses. The only communal structure in any kind of functional condition is the local bar. Believe it or not, this is the moderately safe starter area. The world of Kenshi is somewhat medieval and more than a little weeaboo flavored. The visual language merges Japanese samurai aesthetics with Western cowboy ones, a winning time-honored formula. Ninjas and Ronin wield katanas, but take refuge in adobe structures to escape the heat of windswept badlands. There's a heavy sprinkling of science fiction in there too, but we'll get to that later. For now, Lip steps outside of town to mine some ore. We can trade it to the barkeep in exchange for some of Kenshi's global currency, called cats. We use the proceeds to pay for our lunch. Man's gotta eat, after all. The humble food cube doesn't seem terribly appetizing, but it's highly nutritious and can feed us for our next 2 meals. Great travel food. Love me a food cube. Almost immediately, some starving bandits try to jump me for my food cube. We kite them into town, where the token guards at the bar beat them unconscious. Nice shirt, asshole. Think I'll take your sandals, too. The game isn't lying when it tells you that your character isn't special. We start at the bottom, with terrible stats across the board. Combat stats are improved by fighting, and we haven't done any of that. Our only advantage right now is that we have nothing in our inventory, which makes us fast. Until we level up a bit, we're going to be running away from most fights, and that's going to be a while. We head out of town and trek our way north, past the nearby town of Stack. In doing so, we enter the lands controlled by the Holy Nation. The Holy Nation is a fanatical religious culture. They control some of the safest and most fertile tracts of land in the entire game. We're operating on a sort of Warhammer 40k Imperium of Man type dealio. If you're a human, it's a decent place to live considering the alternatives, but it is a very rigid and xenophobic life that they lead. One of the main reasons for that are the core tenets of their faith. 1, be a pure-blooded human being. We'll get to it, but that's actually a lot harder than you think. 2, preferably be born a male. Women are second-class citizens in the Holy Nation. Andrew Tate-ass religion. 3, be a Luddite. These guys shun any sufficiently advanced technology. They think it's witchcraft or something. 4, dig faster. If you're caught slipping up in any shape or form, it's right to the slave mines. Or the other thing. The big thing. That we'll talk about some other time. The Holy Nation backs up this harsh religion with considerable military might. Their paladins wear heavy armor and carry a big stick. They're one half of the two warring factions that turn the border zone into a ruin. Talk shit about their patron god Alkran and you'll wish you hadn't. Sadly, I'm not sure we're going to be obeying any of those tenets. Considering Lip is a Greenlander, he's probably from the Holy Lands, it just seems like he wasn't down with the doctrine. Guess that's why he found himself in the border zone to begin with. That and the habitual petty theft. Oh yeah, that's why we're here. There's a number of farms and mines that dot these plains, and I'm sure at least one or two of them have an unattended storehouse or shed that Lip could accidentally find unlocked. We snag lunch for tomorrow and as many valuables as we can reasonably carry. We hoof it back to the hub because the bartender doesn't care about stolen gear and will buy it at full sell value. We use the newly acquired funds to upgrade our weapon and set back out. What you just witnessed is the main principle behind Kenshi's gameplay loop. Locate and acquire resources, transform those resources into cats, and use those cats to stay alive. In this instance, that means eating our next meal, and use the excess to upgrade your gear. As we get stronger, the variety of methods available to us will grow, but the objective is the same.
ทำงาน เก็บเงิน
The events directly following our first taste of success can regrettably only be described as a rampant crime spree. Lip goes from village to village, mostly in the dead of night, and robs the residents blind. We didn't quite clear out that first farmhouse, so we head back and clean out their entire stockpile of food. On a lark, we step inside their home and end up selling the headman back his own bread. Stay classy, Lip. Is it true that outside women use their men as sex slaves? Man, these Okronites have got to get out more. We stop by Stack and buy a backpack and some of the maps of the surrounding area. The trader's backpack lets us stack items inside of it, and the maps will help us find new marks. The backpack does limit our combat skill a bit, but Lip's not really a fighter anyway. We also swap out our dirty rags for some real clothes. Back in black, looking good. We get into a minor scrape outside of Bad Teeth when we lead some hungry bandits into the waiting blades of the paladins at the door. Combat in Kenshi is cool. It's moderately random, but affected by a number of factors. Character stats determine things like block and swing speed. Damage is locational. If your arm is disabled, you'll lose the ability to use a two-headed weapon. If one of your legs is down, you're limping until it's fixed. The only real control you have over it is preparation, picking your targets, and the occasional manual dodge. I kind of adore this system. After we mop up the starvers, we shoot the shit with one of the guards. We ask him for some travel tips, and boy does he give us some. Stick to the sacred lands. There are worshippers of Narco everywhere. Narco? Oh, for fuck's sake. Whatever you do, don't travel northwest. There's massive, hungry monsters up there. Treasure hunters are always going that way, and they never come back. Can do. Add that to the travel list. We hit another farm, but it's pretty bare bones. These people must live pretty Spartan, I guess. The next farm proves a little more fruitful, but it's still not a crazy amount of loot. The next place we come across is one of those mines. I'm pretty sure these are the slow, low-tech versions of this iron refinery. They're a little crude and require many hands to operate, which must be why they need the slaves. Spartan indeed. Security is a bit tight here, and we have difficulty snagging anything. Back on the road. We head into the Alpine regions further north. The sun rises over a quaint little mining settlement as we get to the outskirts. This is where we get pretty lucky. We manage to snag some fuel and ration packs in the main bunkhouse before anybody comes in. As I'm about to head back south, I click on the biggest structure in town and notice it's labeled General Storage. Looks secluded. Jackpot. Chainmail sheets are timely to produce, so they're fairly expensive. The bread and extra fuel don't hurt either. After we're done filling our pack, we just walk right out of town. Ever so slowly, we carefully hobble our way into the capital city of Blister Hill. Somewhere in the internal keep is the throne of the Holy Lord Phoenix, the king of these lands and the figurehead of the country's religion. As such, the military presence here is substantial. We're not interested in any of that and don't plan on staying long, though. We head for the local tavern and sell whatever we can without arousing suspicion. Should lighten our load a bit. Two doofuses at one of the tables are gushing about meeting Phoenix. He has this presence. So like a cult leader? Jealous. Dude, you're a cog in the machine, man. We grab a sleeping bag for healing any serious wounds and for keeping warm on cold desert nights. Snagged us a better quality shirt and a turban that'll help us mitigate penalties from wading through dust storms. On our way back across the border, we clean up the last of the loot at that first farm. God, these poor people. Hope none of that stuff was set aside as like tribute for the paladins or anything. Might be in some deep shit, come to think of it, but not my problem. We walk into the Lonely Hub bar, sell our gear, and walk out just a little richer. With that, we put our thieving ways back in the box. For now. To the south of the border zone is the other half of the conflict that destroyed it. Squin is part of the Shek Kingdom. The Shek are a race of humanoids with bony spikes that haphazardly grow off of many parts of their bodies. They're a warrior race that prides themselves on their combat prowess. Losing a battle is a shameful thing for a Shek. Very Klingon-esque. For that very reason, Lip is here to shop around for a bodyguard. Almost immediately, we bump into a serf named Soto. Soto became part of the Shek serf class after she got bested in combat. She longs to get out and fight again, but her master won't let her go until her debt is paid. "Why don't you just run away?" says Lip. "It's unwise to steal from a Shek warrior," says Soto. Fair. Lip pays her 3,000 cat bond and she joins us on our adventure. Shek are bad at intellectual tasks. They also eat like crazy, but in return, they're great natural fighters. We plan on giving her a defensive saber and turning her into a tank. I will fight as a Shek is meant to. Damn straight. But, well, that was my last 3,000 cats, so... We stop after just 3 pieces of ore. This has taken too long for Lip, and Soto seems pretty tired of this kind of work. Plus, she's really bad at it. Lip sighs, hands his pack to Soto, and gets to work. He's not skilled enough to reliably snag anything from containers, but anything out in the open is fair game. We managed to grab some chainmail sheets and armor plates from the general store. Briefly thought about picking this lock, but then I thought better of it. Kenshi's crime system is pretty good too. If you're doing something illegal, there's a debuff that gets applied to you. If you're seen by a character while the debuff is active, you're caught and the alarm is raised. That's standard stuff. But the debuff stays active for a couple seconds after you stop directly stealing stuff. It mechanically simulates being caught in the act. No standing up Elder Scrolls style and facing no consequences. So we've got to be a little more aware of our surroundings. This is cool. As we're about to skip town, I decide to take a fight with some rude dudes that the guards don't seem interested in finishing off. The guy's already a bit beat up, and there's 2 of us, so why the hell not? Well, we beat the guy, but Soto is knocked unconscious in the effort, and Lip is badly beaten. Again, I feel the need to emphasize that we are nothing at this stage of the game. Worse fighters than one half-starved guy dressed in rags. But that's okay. Taking hits like this just means we're leveling up our toughness skill, which improves our ability to negate damage. In the simplest terms possible, the game is mechanically incentivizing us to get our asses beat. There's no way to train that stat outside of combat other than using a mod. Huh. We rest up at rented beds at the tavern and set out again when we're fully healed. You know, the hub is starting to feel a bit like home. A relatively calm patch of water, or sand, in an otherwise religiously fanatical, destructive warrior culture sea, or desert. Yeah, that made sense. Except usually when you come home from a long day of work, there aren't dust bandits camped right across the street, and usually you aren't getting shook down for $500 as you're putting the key in your front door. Usually. Unless you live in, like, Detroit or something. I mean, you know what we do to bandits at this point. It's good practice to strip the weapons off of enemy combatants when they're unconscious. Don't want them getting back up and deciding they're still in the fight. While we're at it, we strip them of their armor too and sell it to the barman. Remember, kids, always loot the bodies. With this and the money we already have on us, we end up with enough money to buy one of those ruined houses in town. Come to think of it, who is collecting these property fees in the hub? At any rate, it's cheaper to buy a wrecked house and rebuild it. Once we do, we'll have ample space to stash gear and eventually training facilities to improve our characters. We spring for the bigger storm house over the smaller shack. You'll quickly outgrow those little shacks, and the monetary and material investment isn't too much bigger for its cooler, older brother. We're a few building materials shy of getting this old house into functioning order. We could send Lip into the Holy Lands to try and find some, but we've got a better idea. On one of those maps we bought, it reveals the ruins of an old settlement in the eastern regions of the border zone. There might be some materials for us to scrounge up there. If nobody's home anymore, why not help ourselves? We knew about this spot before, but now that we've got a backpack and there's 2 of us, we're more willing to risk the trip. These valleys are some dangerous territory. The dust bandits have their main holdout somewhere in these hills, and there's really no friendly patrols keeping the region safe. We'll have to look over our shoulders as we navigate this territory. The winding paths make for rough terrain, and it trips up both me and the AI's pathfinding. We've got to get above all this stuff. Get a bird's eye view. Case in point, we dodged some bandits on this trail and are forced to take another route. The hub isn't unique. There's lots of abandoned settlements out here. This one was probably hit by raiders. Maybe its inhabitants picked up shop and left when the Holy Nation military pulled out. We can't be sure. Once we're inside, Lip sifts through the rubble for anything useful, while Soto stays on the lookout for any bad guys. There's a lot here, so we're probably going to end up making a second trip. We make sure to distribute the weight a bit between us before we head out. Hopefully we can make up some speed that way. On the way back, we spot a way station looming over the road. Seems like the lights are still on, and we stop in to see who's home. The Tech Hunters are the only human faction in Kenshi who are concerned with trying to uncover the history of the world. Alright, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. There's wreckage everywhere. I'm not talking about the adobe huts. I'm talking about the rusting hulls of something. There's support struts, gears, things that look like they used to actuate and function, the slowly decaying parts of something industrial. This is beyond the technological capabilities of any of the major factions we've met so far, and most of the ones we haven't. So what the hell is going on here? Surprise, surprise, it's the post-apocalypse again. As if you didn't know that already. There was clearly a technologically advanced civilization that once controlled all of the known world. What happened to them is up in the air.
They could have mysteriously disappeared, only leaving behind a legacy of enigmatic technology. That's gay.
This, in my opinion, is the main driving force of Kenshi. Sifting through the remains, cultural practices, and histories that might hold pieces of the past at their core. Finding any nuggets of pre-collapse information that might give us any sense of what happened. There's just so many questions that need answering here. For instance, was this pre-existing civilization spacefaring? Humanity clearly exists in this world, and that night sky is not the same as ours. This is not Earth. Is this an alternate history? Did humanity originate on this planet in the logic of the game, or did we colonize it? This game, man, it gives you so much to think about. At least, it does for me. I'll try to tackle any questions as they pop up, and I'll be sure to grab and present any possible leads when our characters encounter them too. And because I feel the need to point this out, I'm gonna try to avoid surfing the wiki as much as I can or watching anybody's lore breakdowns. The fun is in the digging for me, and hopefully that results in a more honest synopsis. So if my estimations of what happened are a little off from the community consensus, then that's why. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, the Tech Hunters. They delve into some of the most remote and forgotten parts of the known world and try to bring back valuable lost technologies. They've got way stations like this across the map, and their home base is somewhere in the mountainous regions to the north. Maybe we'll stop there one day, but for right now, we offload some gear that we don't need. We'll grab Soto a backpack of her own and some more food cubes. Hey, you know what? Is that what the food cubes are? It just doesn't seem like the type of meal a medieval society would produce. I can understand if it was referred to as a loaf or something like that, but the nomenclature is food cube. Is this some attempt at recreating an efficient space-age survival food? Like whoever was left after whatever cataclysm occurred was able to make this super nutrient-dense thing, and the complex machinery that was used to make it was eventually lost? The food that exists now might be a cultural practice that came about just because that's how everyone's ancestors used to eat their food. The current era food cube is one of the most nutrient-dense meals you can buy. Plus, that is the kind of thing that could occur if there was a huge societal collapse. As soon as 2 generations down the line, the world would probably start looking a lot different than how it started. You see what I mean? Questions, man. I've got questions.
Who killed the world?
In my headcanon, Kenshi takes place in the same universe as Star Sector, like on one of those planets that's decivilized outside the core worlds after the collapse. Yeah, one of those. To get back to the gameplay, we finally return to the hub and finish refurbishing the Stormhouse. Our dynamic duo gets to work installing all of the initial necessities. Lights and general storage go up first. After that, it's a research bench. This thing will let us use books and certain material components to navigate the tech tree. It's a vital piece of kit that will eventually get us access to stat training stations, crafting benches, and lots of other neat stuff. Kenshi does have a base building component where you can eventually settle a plot of land and grow your own settlement. Most of the faction settlements in the game are made out of the same pieces that we'll eventually be able to construct ourselves. We're quite a ways off from that point in the game, but this is a nice little appetizer. We've got some surplus food and some downtime here, so we spend a day or two at home. Lip starts checking off a few of the first techs, while Soto spends her time brawling with the occasional bandit squad. Gotta get those combat skills up. When we exhaust our books and subsequently our ability to research, we set out again. I'm planning on taking Lip and Soto west, deeper into Shek territory. My thinking was that there has to be more ruins out there, or at the very least, another settlement full of houses for us to burgle. In Squin, we pick up some more maps. One shows the location of the southernmost settlements, which we'll get to later, and another reveals the few scattered villages in the swamp, which we'll get to later. We stock up on some more cheap provisions and set out. The Sten Desert is another in a long list of wind-blasted canyons. These rocky passageways are the bread and butter of Kenshi's beginner zones. This ruin is fairly sizable. Loose stones litter the ground around crumbling homes. It's in a fairly defensive position, and there are some abandoned weapons littering the ground. Some armor plates, too. Was there a battle here? I mean, it doesn't matter now, I suppose. We grab what we can carry and move on. Odmog is the Shek capital. It's a cramped utilitarian town that's basically one big hill fort. Impressive. Just another pit stop for our characters, though. We refit Soto's armor a bit. Incremental upgrades is the name of the game here. Security is pretty tight too, so we don't end up lifting anything. Whatever. There's other suckers out there. We head south. Up ahead, what I initially thought was another ruin is in actuality the Great Fortress. Yeah, right. Seems like the Shek Kingdom is in a bit of a period of decline. After the kingdom's war against humanity waged on, seemingly endlessly, both sides began to feel the effects. Eventually, Shek leadership changed hands, as it often does in a warrior culture that values strength. A woman named Esata slew the previous king and usurped his throne. Esata was actually a moderate by Shek standards in that she didn't wage a total 24/7 suicide assault against every human nation. There are certainly still hostilities between the Shek and the Holy Nation, but it seems Esata has called for a lull in the fighting, at least on her people's account. It seems her supporters want to recoup their losses and to repair some of the wounds of war. Currently, the two military giants sit in a sort of medieval Cold War. There are warmongering portions of the Shek populace that see her as a dissident, someone who has strayed from the ways of their people. Time has yet to tell if she can maintain some degree of lasting order for her realm. For Lip and Soto's part in all this, there isn't much in the way of work or very many goodies out here in the open for us to snatch. Plus, it isn't really the best tourist destination on the planet, so let's bounce. These are skin spiders, one of Kenshi's gallery of odd wildlife. They don't seem to be arachnids by any traditional meaning of the term, so is the name a minor misnomer? Listen, I'm not a biologist, clearly, but that sounds like a colloquialism that ended up sticking. I would honestly be hard-pressed to categorize these things into any kind of traditional animal kingdom. I mean, are they mammals or what? All that matters to us is that they're carnivorous and that we're currently faster than them. We range east to visit this tech hunter way station and restock a bit. This is the Great Swamp. It takes up a large tract of land to the direct south of the border zone. It's a maze of alien flora and is somewhat hard to navigate without getting your feet wet. For that reason, it's primarily the home of bandits and drug producers who reside deeper in the wetlands. It's a bit above our combat pay grade, so we're just skirting the edge of it to take a different path back home. Wanted to see some fresh sights, and Kenshi is really good at providing them. Stinks like my musty old grandma in here, says Lip. That paints a vibrant mental picture. These little dialogue barks play sometimes when you enter new areas, stop around certain points of interest, or encounter main factions for the first time. They're pretty cool, and are an easy way to add a little personality to these characters. Player-controlled characters actually all have certain personality tags attached to them that decides what lines they say in chats. Certain lines depend on a character's race. In the case of unique followers, of which there are a good number, they might have unique dialogue when taking them to certain areas or when put into certain circumstances, as we'll see later. Personality even ties in how characters behave in the case of a prison break, if the wiki is to be believed. That's some fun stuff. A system that didn't have to be included in the game, but for me, adds a awesome layer of depth. You want to like these little rascals before they get ripped to shreds by any number of threats out here. Hivers seem harmless enough, but don't let that fool you. Those guys are plain sneaky. We're entering Vane, the easternmost holding of the Western Hive. Hivers are anthropomorphic bug men. Their society exists around some kind of pseudo-hive mind. While we're wandering around the village, one hiver will follow us and laugh, as if some unseen joke were being made at our expense. They all serve an as-of-yet unseen queen somewhere to the west. Aside from that, they hold the position of Kenshi's funny little guys, TM. It is well known that they try to scam outsiders into buying bunk goods and produce low-quality prosthetics. When we step foot into the general store, which is of course plastered in signs, the hiver running the place just won't stop asking us to buy something. Take a look at our robotics. We make the best. Won't break. Not like the junks those tech hunters find in outdated ruins, he says, standing in a haphazardly organized sweatshop. The Holy Nation will kill a hiver on sight, and the Shek probably think that they're weak. It's hard to deny that they're a major force to be reckoned with, however. They've carved out a sizable tract of land for themselves and seem to have held onto it, seeing as they haven't been bowled over by the other major factions on their borders. We peruse their wares a bit and move on. Excuse me? We pass through the very western border of the Holy Nation on our path north, which Soto comments on. Isn't this where hundreds of Shek and hivers disappear, she says? Yeah, that's about right. This place is called the Fog Islands. a series of short mesas interrupted by lowlands. There seems to be a permanent low-hanging fog that collects at the bottom of these valleys. It's notoriously difficult to navigate, and legends abound of travelers entering here and never returning. This place is best avoided by lower-level characters, but we're venturing in here anyways. Rumor has it that there's a town somewhere in the middle of this soup, a hideaway for criminals and castaways. After all, it's hard to be found if you're a wanted man in the middle of all this. There might be some opportunities for someone of Lip's demeanor in a place like that. Fog men. They seem to be hivers that have turned cannibalistic. They're more tribal and aggressive than their western hive cousins. They rove in large packs around the lowlands and will drag anyone they catch down here to a gruesome fate. Lip is fast enough at this point to outrun them, but Soto isn't. Our best bet is to avoid them. There it is. Mongrel. We're almost there. Seeing the terrain from this angle gets me thinking. What is this fog? It doesn't seem to be dissipating, which makes me think it isn't water vapor. I'm not sure this zone's environment can maintain low-hanging water-based fog for this long without it evaporating into the surrounding air. At the very least, there doesn't seem to be an environmental source for it that I can readily see. If fog like this were present in the wetlands further south, I can understand that, but no, this area seems arid, like the border zone, which leads me to believe that this is another consequence of the aforementioned sci-fi cataclysm. There certainly is what seems to be a slightly higher concentration of debris here. Maybe this is some kind of off-gas? Is some old machinery part pumping this stuff out? Is it slightly heavier than air? Could explain why it's pooling down here, but if the density is high enough to make that happen, I think it would prevent Lip and Soto from breathing, so I'm not sure. At any rate, we should probably focus on avoiding the cannibal bugmen and not hypothesizing about the chemical makeup of the fog. Or should we? Should we be breathing this in? Is that what happened to the fogmen? Shit, this game, man. After that little fracas, we get to talking with one of the town guards. "Congrats," he says. "You're stuck here." "No one ever leaves Mongrel," says the guard. "That's probably on account of the bad neighborhood." "In that case, do you have any tips?" asks Lip. "Avoid the death yards. People always wind up getting lost in the mist. And don't travel north. People tend not to come back from that way." Damn, another recommendation not to head up that way. Gotta be some truth to that advice then. "Is there at least any work here?" "Jobs are all dry. Come back in a few months." Damn, we may have come here for nothing. The town is fairly large, all things considered. They're relatively safe up here on the high ground, but food seems to be an issue. It's marked up here at a higher price than usual. Probably hard to run shipments, considering the risk. As we're exploring town, a hiver begins to follow us around, beeping occasionally. This is Beep. He's a Kenshi fan favorite, and I can understand why. There's a lot to love about Beep right from your first interaction with him. Beep! Hi Beep. How do you know my name? You just said Beep for no reason. I assumed you were introducing yourself. You must be some kind of genius then. Yes, I am. Can I join you? I want to become strong, become a swordsman. Do you have any skills? I have nothing. They exiled me from the hive. Just because you kept saying Beep? I am defective. No good. But since I left, I feel free, like an individual. I like it, but stuff out here keeps trying to kill me. Beep tires of running. Time to stab the things that chase me. Alright, how much money do you want? What's money? Welcome to the team! Beep, everybody. Stat-wise, Beep is a worker drone, which means he gets farming, laboring, and athletic skill buffs. He's also going to make a decent thief. His dexterity and toughness bonuses are really welcome, but he suffers when attempting to research, or cook, or throw a decent punch. We're going to try and do the funniest thing possible and build Beep as a martial artist. Martial arts in Kenshi take forever to spec into. You need to level up a handful of stats before a character can become decent at it, and that takes a long time if you don't know what you're doing. Which, I don't. It'll take a long time before Beep is a competent fighter, but when he does get good, he'll be one of the most potent warriors on our team. Until then, he's our pack mule. A local weapons dealer is trying to fearmonger customers into buying his wares, and the local armor trader is probably stripping gear off of the dead adventurers from outside the walls. It's a utilitarian, isolationist existence these people must live. There's talk of people going crazy from being here for so long. When the sun comes up over the foglands, we plot our next course. We're definitely not staying in this dump with these losers. The easiest path out of the Fog Islands seems like this path, leading straight south. It's prime Fogmen territory, however, so we'll need to be on the lookout. We get to the other side surprisingly unscathed. From there, it's smooth sailing through Vane and straight on towards the hub. Some downtime isn't the worst thing in the world. Beep gets to work mining copper, and he's pretty good at it, considering his fast run speed and skill bonus. Lip plugs away at more book learning, and Soto takes fights where she can to earn some combat XP. The copper income keeps us at least fed, but we need another big haul before we can start seriously upgrading our gear. Now that we have our new friend Beep in the mix, however, I think Lip would know just the place that we can score us some salvage. This time, we're heading east. This takes us across Skinner's Rome. It's another arid region whose main features are these tall mesas and buttes. Butts? It's a sort of American Old West type biome. Sort of reminds me of Monument Valley. I like it, but this place isn't the thing we're thinking of. In the distance, the sky darkens. The ground is black and dead. Rusting structures of forgotten purpose swallow the horizon. This is the Deadlands, one of the more overtly ruined places of Kenshi. The acid rain that constantly falls here also seeps into the soil. This makes it so human characters will find it hard to traverse the zone without good quality boots or a solid raincoat. Beep, on the other hand, is immune to the effects of the acid. Maybe it's his carapace. This unfortunately means that Lip and Soto won't be accompanying Beep into the deepest reaches of this place, where there might be some old world tech. Lip hands Beep his pack, reassures him of the plan, and sends him off. It's hard to even tell what that huge ruin in the distance is. It's so Giger-esque that it makes it difficult to even determine what it used to be when it functioned. High-tech smokestack? Nuclear power plant? Crash-landed space vessel of some kind? I guess we'll never really know. Those broken down husks that litter the area are iron spiders. Most are inactive, but some are not. Beep needs to scan the environment for movement and check his corners. They seem like worker bots to me. The exposed machinery and simple clamp hands don't seem practical for any kind of military application. They're here in such large numbers, which makes me think that this place was some kind of manufacturing center. That certainly lines up with the major ecological damage of this place. This is exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. These structures are still guarded by elite iron spiders when they're intact, but their programming seems not to care about storehouses in this sort of state of disrepair. There's all kinds of goodies scattered in the concrete here. Old power cores, steel alloys, and other valuable bits of scrap. Beep hurriedly collects as much as he can comfortably carry and gets out of there. When Beep regroups with his compatriots, we make sure to distribute the weight amongst the crew. Lip and Soto are familiar with some fellas who would be more than happy to take all this stuff off their hands. Yet another successful scavenging run. Before the last bit of notes, I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful supporters from the Patreon. Thank you to Ben Couch, Minty Pie, Thomas Bomber, Empire Doom, Interesting Squirrel, Galbatrix, Jan Kokotka, Trench Gun, Eggs and Toast, oh god, I hope I say these right, Jadovsky History, Ethan, Jesse Watson, Victor Sales, Daniel Soltyshiniski, thank you Google Translate, Reapiter, Reg Show Guy, Alfarius Omegon, Joseph McClelland, and Top Goose. So that's a wrap for our inaugural sightseeing trip into Kenshi, but don't worry, we've just scratched the surface. Out of the gigantic landmass that is Kenshi's continent, we've only explored the very central lands. There's so much more for us to see out here, and I plan on exploring it all. Every biome, every culture, every scrap of lore. I need to see it. I also need to get this footage off my hard drive. God damn. Kenshi's a big game, and I plan on taking chunks like this out of it for the foreseeable future. So stick around. In the next episode, we're going to venture south, see the Great Swamp, and explore as far south as we can possibly at this level. Sometime after that, we'll head east and interact with the other major human faction in the game. And who knows, maybe we'll ignore what little pieces of advice we've been given and venture north into the hungry country that awaits us. And as always, if you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you. Please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.